Today's Russian ideology can be placed in the same league as fascism, Nazism, and communism, ideologies that have left a bloody trail in the world history. What do Ruscism and other totalitarian ideologies have in common? Let's find out in context. Timothy Snyder, an American historian and professor at Yale University, explains that Russia fulfills most of the criteria for fascism. These criteria include the cult of personality around a single leader, the veneration of the dead through the cult of victory in the Second World War, and the myth of a golden age in the imperial past that must be restored by force. The first sign is the cult of the leader. The Nazis, fascists, and communists replaced love of the nation with love of the leader as the personification of the nation. Hitler represented all of Germany, Mussolini represented Italy, and Lenin and Stalin represented the Soviet Union. In modern Russia, an atmosphere of Putin's exclusivity is being cultivated. His decisions are seen as the only right ones, with the feelings that if there is Putin, there is Russia. If there is no Putin, there is no Russia.
Наше преимущество Путин, и мы его должны защитить. Спасибо.
Over the past 24 years, at least one generation of Russians has been born and raised hearing such statements from everywhere. They cannot remember or imagine Russia without Vladimir Putin.
Putin, President! Mira! Ура!
Sign number 2. Restoration of the empire. The Italian fascists wanted to revive the glory of ancient Rome. The Nazis in the Third Reich claimed to be of Aryan descent, so they claimed territories once settled by Germanic tribes as their own. During the Second World War, Joseph Stalin sought to restore the borders of the Russian Empire and extend its influence within the USSR and the Communist bloc. For decades, Putin and his supporters have legitimized expansion as Russia's historic mission. They refer to the newly independent countries as failed states and their populations as little brothers. Russia believes it has rights for the entire territory of the former Russian Empire and the Soviet Union.
Крушение Советского Союза было крупнейшей геополитической катастрофой века. Десятки миллионов наших сограждан и соотечественников оказались за пределами российской территории.
The Nazis started wars to rescue their so-called own people in other countries from oppression. Similarly, the Russians justify the war they have unleashed in Ukraine by mythically protecting the Russian-speaking population. In fact, both the Nazis almost 100 years ago and the Russians today use similar rhetoric to release their imperial ambitions. For Putin, simply speaking Russian means belonging to the so-called Russian world, which means being under his rule. Sign number 3. Normalization of war and the cult of death. Hitler wrote that war is as natural to man as childbirth is to women. Militarization was also a defining feature of the Soviet Union. Russia has also embarked on a path of total militarization. Children are dressed in military uniforms and taught in schools that the highest virtue is to sacrifice one's life for one's country. Since 2015, the Russian youth organization Yunarmia has been recruiting children as young as 8 and teaching them military skills. In 10 years, they have cultivated an entire generation of young people of military age ready to take part in hostilities and indoctrinated with ideological slogans. The parallel with the Nazi Hitler youth is clear. The sign number 4. Disregard for the other nations. Moreover, Putin's propaganda promotes contempt for Ukraine, Europe, the USA and the so-called collective West. Anti-Western sentiment is another common feature of historical and contemporary totalitarian regimes. The Russian Federation, much like the Soviets and Nazis of their time, portrays itself as an opposition to the rotting West. For followers of the modern Russian politics, democracy and the global change represent degradation. And here we cannot help but recall the Nazis' infamous opposition of the Aryan race to all others. In the eyes of the Nazis, Jews were a threat to National Socialism and the people without the right to exist. The Communists also regarded Jews with a sense of national identity as a threat to the regime. Both the Nazis and the Communists denied Ukrainians the right to an independent state. Today's Russia under Putin denies the national self-sufficiency of Ukrainians and the independence of Ukraine, thus inheriting the legacy of the two totalitarian regimes mentioned above. The war in Ukraine Ukraine has revealed the true face of Russia: massacres of civilians, rape, torture, and the reduction of thriving cities to rubble. Russia operates on the principle that if something cannot be conquered, it must be destroyed. On the 22nd of April, the Russian state portal RIA Novosti published an article entitled "What Russia Should Do with Ukraine." Its main conclusions are as follows: to ban Ukrainian culture and education, to destroy Ukrainians as a nation, to put Ukraine under Russian rule. Therefore, by all criteria, the conclusion is self-evident. Putin's policy is 100% totalitarian ideology, just like Hitler's Nazism, Mussolini's Fascism, and Lenin and Stalin's Communism.